The House Doesn't Always Win is a tabletop RPG written by Michael Whelan and published in 2021 after a successful Kickstarter. You might know Wheels from his work showcasing and reviewing RPGs and board games on Dicebreaker. This game is his own creation, and it uses a standard deck of playing cards to create a tale of desperate revolution and social change. The game works like this. The entire suit of diamonds represents the bad guy elements. Specifically, the diamond face cards represent the three leaders of the opposing regime, and the diamond number cards are elements of that regime that you can exploit to reach the leaders. You can't attack the leaders right away. They loom at the top of the table for most of the game, and an encounter with one acts as the boss battle for an entire session. In-game, they are supposed to each be well-protected overlords of one sort or another, each deserving of either elimination, incarceration, or conversion to the cause. Each player picks from one of the 9 remaining face cards. Each of these options come with their own modifiers that can affect the difficulty of a challenge, and special powers that affect the rules of the game. If you're playing a multi-session mission, you will also pick up multiple skills over time. But the way the game is designed, you can only ever pick up a few of these skills since campaigns only go for 3 sessions max, which is to say there's a lot of built-in replayability here. Players don't hold on to the card that represents their character. It actually goes into the so-called opportunity deck, and if it shows up on a draw, it acts as one kind of critical success or another. When the game starts, it's the GM and the players discussing how their characters are planning to breach the enemy regime. By default, the PCs are underpowered, under-equipped, and with very little hope of succeeding. They can always accomplish some small, easy actions in the game without any draw of the cards, but as soon as the players want to do something challenging, like for example breaking into a high-security office building to hack a computer or to kidnap the nephew of the evil duke to draw his guards out from the castle, then you have a challenge on your hands. Challenges are the core of this game. First, the GM assesses the intended plan and negotiates a difficulty level. This ranges from 1 to 10, with 5 being extremely difficult and anything above being ever closer to impossible. And GM and players discuss which suit is being used. To read directly from the playbooks, actions that fall under clubs are forceful and active, energetic and robust, resistant and tenacious. Actions that fall under hearts are cunning and clever, persuasive and social, and perceptive and wise. Actions that fall under spades are nimble and elegant, effortless and adept, swift and deft. The chosen suit means that when you start drawing cards from the opportunity deck, the players need to draw up the number of cards with that suit equal to the difficulty level set for the action in order to succeed at whatever action was being attempted. For example, if we were trying to kidnap the Duke's nephew, and the GM and players agree that the difficulty is 3, and we were going for a brute force approach using clubs, we would need to draw 3 clubs to succeed. That is, we would need to draw 3 clubs before we drew 4 of any other suit. Anytime 4 of another suit is drawn before you meet the difficulty level set for the action, the challenge is a failure, and you lose all the cards in that hand for the rest of the session. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. The next step in a challenge before drawing cards from the opportunity deck is to add any modifiers to the difficulty level. Kidnapping the nephew might be a 3 at first, but maybe there are some narrative elements at play, like a huge summer festival underway nearby the nephew's house that makes it harder to pull off the plan as intended. That would maybe increase the difficulty to a 4. But then let's say the PC drawing the cards for this challenge has a -1 modifier for clubs. That would bring the difficulty back down to 3. And there might be other special rules from the playbooks that apply as well. When you do get to drawing cards, you're just looking at their suits. But if a face card is drawn that matches your chosen suit for the challenge, it's an automatic critical success with no more cards needed to be drawn, and you give yourself a narrative bonus of some sort. If you draw a face card that matches the suit of the challenge and happens to be your character, this is a critical triumph that allows you to change the narrative to benefit your group. If the draw is starting to look really dicey, you can always choose to fold, in which case all face cards go to the discard pile to later be reshuffled, and each of the number cards is assessed with a D10 roll to see if it is temporarily discarded or actually lost for the rest of the session. If the D10 roll is higher than the card, then the card is lost. You can get the discard pile reshuffled into your opportunity deck anytime an ace is drawn and ends up in the discard pile. As you can imagine, if you keep drawing and failing without folding, very helpful face cards and aces will end up in the death pile where you can never access them again, and that materially changes the probabilities in this game for success and other things. This right here is actually where a lot of the magic takes place with playing card-based RPGs versus ones based on dice. With dice, your probabilities are static throughout a session, but with a deck-draining foundation such as this one, your chances only get worse and worse, and that's by design. The numbered diamond cards on the table are dangled in front of the players like carrots, laced with poison. Each of them can represent an important item or a castle guard or a critical piece of data, but essentially they are tools that can be used to break through to reach and defeat targets. Anytime players are struggling to get around a narrative obstacle, the GM can offer up a weak point. That weak point then becomes the objective of a new challenge. After drawing cards, just like in any other challenge, and if the players succeed, and if they have drawn a number that matches a weak point card on display, then they have the option of working that diamond card into their deck. Diamond cards, when they're drawn in a challenge, act as the suit you're looking for, so they can really increase chances of success as a wild card. But if you absorb too many diamonds into your deck, you're at risk of becoming compromised. Anytime 3 diamonds are drawn from your deck in a challenge, your team is compromised for the rest of the session, meaning that in that moment and anytime there's ever even a single diamond drawn thereafter, the challenge is an instant critical failure. It's hard not to get into the nitty-gritty of the rules here because the rules are where the magic is at, but I have to gloss over a number of other rules for the sake of brevity. I wouldn't suggest ignoring these rules in play. I do think they're all important, but fair warning, the game is touted as fast and simple, but the actual rules run for 60 or 70 pages. The game comes with 9 scenario outlines, each with a different theme. These are all composed of just a few elements: the description of the world and how the 3 targets oppress the people, descriptions of the 3 targets, potential weapons and tools for the PCs, and a handful of rumors that can lead to weak points for players to bite. I was very grateful to see that the book also provides some guidelines on how to write up your own scenario outline. Since there are so few elements to a given scenario, you're free to do a whole lot, which is to say, the setting for this game is pretty much boundless. Alright, so here are my thoughts on the house doesn't always win. Cons: online card handling. Let's face it, a lot of people nowadays are playing online, and if you find yourself doing that with this game, you've got 2 options as the GM. Dedicate a webcam to the table where you display the physical cards, or figure out how to do it in a virtual tabletop. I'm not going to go into all the VTTs that can handle playing cards, but I will say that there's a learning curve for each. But, I mean, we're talking about probably 20 minutes on average here. Specific power dynamic. The intended kind of story this game wants to tell is pretty specifically an underdog resistance going against a powerful regime. Everyone just needs to come to the table with some fight in them in order to get into it. Pros: tight, polished rules. You can tell that this game's been playtested and honed to a bright polish. It captures some of the exciting gambling elements of Texas Hold'em and Blackjack, but it doesn't have hard probabilities at the most macro level. And that's because the table is always deciding a dynamic difficulty level at the start of each hand or challenge. So it ends up being a hybrid poker game and RPG, but balanced in a way that's sophisticated and extremely playable. Plug in themes and scenarios. The artwork throughout the book is evocative and colorful, but it's not really telling you what kind of scenario to run. You can play this game in whatever universe you want. There's nothing stopping you from playing the villains trying to desperately topple good guys either. The 9 included scenarios are all super imaginative, but they're just scratching at the surface of what stories this game can help you tell at the table. And with the scenario template provided, you could easily write one of your own in one sitting. Built-in visual focus. I thought it was a bit of a side bonus, the fact that when you play this game, whether in person or online, there is no expectation to prep any character tokens or encounter maps or spell effects to show. All the focus at the table is on the cards and the playbooks, and the rest is theater of the mind. This means that once you know the rules of the game and you have your scenario chosen or written out, there is no more prep. I'm not sure I've ever read an RPG and immediately started writing notes on my own homebrewed content, but this one inspired me to start writing up a scenario of mecha versus kaiju. That's not very original, I'll admit, but within the soft contextual rules of The House Doesn't Always Win, my little scenario does take on some features that do make it interesting. For example, it's not an endless onslaught of kaiju, it's just 3. And the mecha aren't up to spec, they're outdated, underpowered, and in disrepair. In the end, I can't even take credit for this concept. This game basically wrote it for me. And that's yet another trick up its sleeve. Thanks as always for watching. This is Dave signing off. See ya.